Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Dunn. I'm chair of the Orange County Realtors Risk Management Committee. And today I want to welcome CAR's Dr. Josh Sharfman and welcome you to attending our webinar, Becoming a Cybercrime Prevention Superhero, or as I would like to say, have you been pwned? So welcome, Dr. Sharfman. And one thing I want to let everybody know is we watched a similar presentation that was done at CAR meetings, and the information in here is really super good. If you have any friends that you want to have hop on at the last minute, this is great information for your personal and your professional cybersecurity. And I'm so happy that we were able to get Dr. Sharfman here. Since March of 2020, we've retreated online to the safety of our computers, and the virtual aspect of real estate transactions even became more essential. However, also essential became the need to stay safe online. Here today to provide some best practices on how to become a cybercrime prevention superhero for your clients, as well as for your personal life, we do have the best of the best, Dr. Josh Sharfman. Dr. Sharfman has worked with California Association of Realtors for the last 40 years as a consultant, as an outside board member of the Association Real Estate Business Services subsidiary, and also for the last 17 years as the association's Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. Prior to joining CAR full-time, Dr. Sharfman led product development for a variety of privately held and public companies. There's a really long list here, but I'm just going to say Hughes Aircraft was one of them. Dr. Sharfman has been around. He's also served as an adjunct professor of engineering at USC for 19 years. He holds 6 system and method patents with an additional applications in the pipeline. He provides expert testimony for software patent and copyright infringement matters. Wow, what a resume. Thank you for joining us today.
It's wonderful to have the opportunity to meet with our members and to meet with all of you. Let me tell you what I hope to accomplish in the time we have together. I've been asked to speak about risk management, and risk management really is all about moderating how much risk, how much exposure you're willing to tolerate, and what you're willing to do to avoid it. And when we think about risk management as it relates to cybercrime and technology risk management, there are many different adjectives that we can use to describe it. Sometimes we try to transfer the risk. Sometimes we try to avoid it. Sometimes we simply try to prepare and be ready to take control should the risk manifest itself. By way of introduction, I am sharing with you that I think that there's relevant information that I'm going to share in the next 55 minutes or so. No matter whether you're an individual practitioner, one of the small dogs, whether you are responsible for a team of people, one of the medium dogs, or whether in fact you are dealing with everyone in a brokerage and you are one of the large dogs. I will tell you that borrowing from this metaphor, you might ask the question, Josh, are you going to talk about things that you're simply reporting on, or are you talking about things from personal experience? And I assure you that I've eaten my own dog food here, and that everything that I'm speaking about today are things that we use, that I use either personally or professionally, and I can feel very comfortable sharing them with you. So you may choose how you want to accept and listen to the information that's coming your way. You might choose to accept it as advice, tips, or guidance. You might think of it as being some helpful ideas that you may want to investigate at some subsequent time. If you haven't heard me speak previously, you may not be aware that each one of my presentations actually does come with a warranty or a guarantee. And the guarantee is simply this. If in the course of the time that we spend together, you don't feel that you receive anything actionable, anything that you can put into practice after investing your time with me, I won't let it go for naught. When you see me at the next CAR business meetings, and where we're able to meet in person, you hunt me down and say, Josh, you owe me a Starbucks. I will be happy to, how shall I say, make sure that you at least get something out of the experience today. Let's take a look at the agenda. I really think it's important for you to know what it is in detail that we're going to speak about. I'll do my best not to read slides for you or slides to you. I'm sure you know how to do that. What I would appreciate is if you have questions as we go through, please put them into the Q&A as being differentiated from the chat. It will be easier for me to recognize them, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go through the presentation today when they have relevance to everyone in the group. If they are really one-off questions, I'll be happy to hold those until the end, and at the culmination of the webinar, we can go ahead and explore those individual items. Throughout, I will also let you know exactly where we are, and we're going to begin with theft. And throughout, we're going to have a number of polls. There'll be 3, and I'm going to share the first poll with you right now. And what I would appreciate is if you would engage with me. Let me and everyone else on the webinar understand whether you have, in fact, been the victim of a theft crime. You can choose none, you can choose one of the choices, you can choose many of the choices. One of the reasons why I do this, other than to make sure that you are not only conscious, but that you're engaged in the presentation, is that you might find it interesting to know whether this particular group models closely the responses that I see more generally, or if there is something that is unique about the group. I will tell you that what is common right now is that about 75% of you have answered in the first 45 seconds, and that is fairly common. So I am going to close the poll now, and I will share the results with you. And I will tell you that this is a very unusual group insofar as that the majority of you have not been a victim of a theft crime. That's really interesting. So while that might be unique, I ask that you also listen to this, not only from the perspective of what you are doing, but also perhaps for the benefit of family members. You have an interesting responsibility. You are harboring personal identifying information of your clients. And at the end of the day, the most valuable resource that you have, the most valuable asset that you have is your reputational integrity. And we want to make sure that none of that ever becomes besmirched or is squandered. It's so easy if your laptop is visually accessible to someone who's walking by your automobile. They can simply pick it up and take it. It's a great idea to keep it locked in the trunk. And if you have an SUV where the trunk contents are visible, pull the tonneau cover. It's really easy for you to turn your back, take your Starbucks up to the counter, add cream and sweetener, and turn around and come back. And amazingly, your computer has sprouted legs and has disappeared. So in general, what are we going to do about the problem where your computer is stolen? And as a result, someone may have access to all of the data that's on your computer, and regrettably, that some of that data might in fact be information that is personally identifying to your clients. Here's what you can do. There is no cost for this. If you are a Windows user, Windows 10 comes complete with a hard disk encryption tool called BitLocker. You can, in fact, encrypt the content of the hard drive. And when you do so, even if someone were to steal your computer, remove the hard drive from the computer and try and connect it to another device, without understanding how to unlock the key of the encrypted hard drive, all they would see is gobbledygook. Takes care of your personal information, takes great care of the information that you're harboring for your clients. The important thing to remember is when you, in fact, encrypt your hard drive, place the recovery key, which is the, oh my gosh, in case I forget my password, what is the key that I can use to unlock or decrypt this drive? Take a snapshot of it, print it, put it in your safe at home, put it in a place of safekeeping so you're never, ever, ever locked out. And the recovery key is this long GUID that you see here. If you happen to be a Mac user, have no frets, have no concerns. You actually have another tool called File Vault, which is an encryption tool that is similar in concept, or I should say identical in concept, to the encryption tool that's available in Windows, BitLocker. And you can find this in settings under security and privacy. You can turn on the File Vault. You would provide a complex password there. And again, you would make a copy of the recovery key, which is in a slightly different format for Macintosh users, or I should say Apple computer users. Keep this. Why are we doing this? And why is it a best practice? One of the things that you are trying to do is make sure that when you have copies of either your own banking information that might be stored on your hard drive, you might have documents from real estate transactions, including financial records from your clients. You want to make sure that if your computer is stolen and the hard drive is removed, you can, in fact, rest assured that the data is encrypted. You have done a diligent job in protecting the privacy of your clients. And this is becoming more and more of an issue as we go forward. However, it doesn't answer the question about what about the data on your hard drive? Oh my gosh, you may have in fact protected that data from being accessed by someone, but you don't have your hard drive any longer. And in fact, perhaps you might lose the hard drive, not because of the theft, but because it failed. What are you going to do in that case? And one last comment. What are you going to do in the event that at one point in time, you've lost your situational awareness, you were not concentrating as you were looking at an email, you clicked on a link, and lo and behold, you got hit with ransomware. And I'm sure you understand what ransomware is. It's all over the news today. It is actually quite remarkable that just this week, it turns out that the bad actors are making so much money with ransomware that they have formed their own venture capital firm to fund the development of more malicious software development. It's really a transformational change in the marketplace. What happens? You click on a bad link, something gets installed on, a malicious program is installed on your computer, it goes ahead and encrypts all the data files on your computer, and the decryption key is held for ransom. There are many different forms of this. You may have seen this before. Of course, payment is always asked for in a cyber currency, which is untraceable. And I really think it's not a matter of if, but it's really a matter of when you might be faced with such a problem. So what is the remedy? What is the solution? Let's assume that all of the preventative measures have been put in place and the weakest link in any computer security environment, which is a human, is involved and the situational awareness was lost. I have a thesis, and my thesis is that if you have to do something consciously in order to preserve your data, you're not going to do it. It's, I know, kind of a bleak or a dark perspective, but I really think it is human nature that if you have to do something and take direct action, you forget about it, or you say, I'll do that tomorrow. I have a different solution, but the way I'm going to set up the solution is to tell you a story. And this is a story of my second son, Zachary. This is Zach at a regatta in San Diego. He walked onto the men's crew team. This is a kid who was really quite interesting insofar as he always puts himself into situations where he enters at the bottom of the heap and he claws his way to the top. He's done this in his entire life. And the image I'm trying to portray is, got a tough kid here. I get a call from him. This goes back, oh my, about 10 to 12 years ago when he was an undergraduate at UC San Diego where these photos were taken. I get a call from him. It's a Sunday afternoon, and he says to me on this phone, "Dad." Okay, parents, when one of your children communicates with that level of emphasis and passion in their voice and calls you dad or mom, what happens? Instantly, your brain tells the adrenal glands, start secreting adrenaline. Respiration goes up, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up. You're all set for fight or flight. Zach, what is it? I'm driving. Zach, be careful while you're driving and talking on the phone. I'm going to the laundromat. Going to the laundromat's a good thing to do, Zachary, when you have dirty clothes. Dad, you don't understand. Famous words. Again, parents, I found that children from the age of being young up to about 11 or 12 years old think that you as a parent are insightful, intelligent, perhaps even brilliant. From about 12 to 22, all that goes away. We don't understand anything. We are, just lumps of protoplasm that are unintelligent and really are clueless. Dad, you don't understand. Zachary, what don't I understand? I left my backpack at the laundromat. Okay, it's just a backpack, Zach. You can replace whatever's in it. But Dad, my computer was in the backpack. I said, that's okay. That disk drive that I gave you that you plug in every night, it has your backup. So even if your computer was stolen, we'll get you a new computer and you'll restore everything from backup. Dad, you don't understand. Zachary, what don't I understand? I haven't used that thing in 6 months. Well, there it is. Haven't used it in 6 months, no backup. What's going to happen? At that point in time, I decided that I was going to fix this, not only for Zachary, but for everyone in the family. 45 minutes later, I get a call back. Big strapping Zachary is crying tears of joy and relief that everything was intact. I went ahead and installed a cloud backup agent on every one of the family's computers. This device or this service essentially backs up every file that changes when it changes and stores it off in the cloud. Anytime your computer is on and connected to the internet, backups are taking place. It's a once and done, set and forget. Once it's installed, it does its job. And we'll come to more details here. Fast forward another couple of years, Zachary has graduated from UC San Diego. He now is in his master's program at Columbia. He's in Toronto with some friends. And at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night, the phone rings, and what do I hear? Dad. Okay, Zachary, what's wrong? My computer, it won't start. Zachary, why wouldn't your computer start? Dad, it got wet. Okay, it's 11 o'clock in Los Angeles. Zachary's calling from Toronto, where it is 2 in the morning. How do computers get wet at 2 in the morning in Toronto? That's the night I learned all about beer pong. Anyway, he calls and says, Dad, my master's thesis is on that computer. It's due on Monday. What can I do? I said, Zach, no problem. Tell me what folder it's in. He told me what folder it was. I went up to my computer, logged on to the cloud backup, downloaded that folder from the backup, and emailed him the folder. He was able to turn in the thesis. Everything was okay, and life was great. So what are the tools that you can use for having these backups? Well, you might think that iCloud is the tool. No, it's not. iCloud is great for synchronizing files across multiple devices. But in fact, if a file changes on one device, it changes on all the devices. And oh, by the way, do you want that behavior? No, you don't want that behavior, because if what caused the file to change was a ransomware attack, where the file was changed, now you have your encrypted file everywhere. You can't get back to the previous version. Same holds true with Dropbox. Same holds true with Google Drive. So what you really want is some form of tool that is not only going to back up your computer continuously, but it's going to maintain versions of the files that were backed up. So let's say on Wednesday, your computer was infected with a ransomware attack. All of the files were encrypted. What you want to do is go back and retrieve your backup from Tuesday, not from Wednesday. You want to go back to the previous point in time where those files exist in an unencrypted form so that you can download those and start over again. There's some great tools for this. One of those tools is BACKBLAZE. I happen to really like this tool because there are no limits and was really inexpensive. I just received an email last week that they're actually raising their prices. They were about $5 a month, and they're going up to about $6.50 a month. I got to tell you, that's really cheap insurance. By the way, my family uses BACKBLAZE. CrashPlan used to have a service for individuals, but now it's really focused to small businesses. Many of you may have small businesses. They're $10 a month and per device. And again, $120 for this working. That's great. We use CrashPlan for some very specific backup scenarios at CAR. I'll give you one of them. One is that in our communications department, we have a graphics designer who works with enormous files. He lost his hard drive, and when he lost his hard drive, there was about just under 4 gigabytes of data that was lost and gone. However, CrashPlan was running on that machine. Simply replaced the defective hard drive, logged on to CrashPlan, hit a button, and over the weekend, 4 terabytes, excuse me, not gigabytes, 4 terabytes of data were restored without a hitch. Really cheap insurance at $120 a month. Carbonite is another great example. All of these preserve multiple versions of your files. And they also have a service where you can ask them to send you a removable hard drive if you don't want to restore all of the data over the internet. So really cheap insurance, a lot cheaper than paying in Bitcoin for ransomware. It is great. It's a great sense of security, or it provides a great sense of security knowing that I set it, I forget it, everything is backing up as long as my computer is on and connected to the internet. So look for continuous backup solutions for you, perhaps members of your family, your businesses, and always focus on those solutions that have a versioning capability where versions are maintained over time, and so that you do not lose the prior history. All right, we're going to switch gears now away from theft and away from malicious corruption of your files, and we'll look at something else. And for this, I'm going to begin with another poll, and let me get that one started for you. Okay. This is another one. So I'm really asking here what your behaviors are and what your practices are for accessing free Wi-Fi. You know, free Wi-Fi is now becoming somewhat ubiquitous, and it's available almost everywhere. Do you use it? Where do you use it? I'm going to ask everybody to jump in here. And for those of you who've already shared, stand up for a minute. Get a little bit of movement. You have another 30 seconds, stretch, that's fine. And again, I'm inviting everyone to participate. You're about halfway through, or about half of the people have decided to participate, and I'm going to encourage the rest of you as well. Come on. I don't know who you are, by the way, meaning that these are anonymous polls, so you don't have to worry about me being able to figure out who said what. No embarrassment here. So let me share the results with you. And again, an unusual group. It's I have not yet spoken with the group who never ever use free Wi-Fi. It is more typical that people are answer everywhere I can, only at Starbucks. I'm glad that some of you use it only with a VPN. And somebody asked, a couple people asked, what's a VPN? We're going to answer these questions. But I love telling stories, and I want to tell you another story. When I first spoke about this, by the way, this case study fails. It fails miserably, and I'm happy to share failures with you. I said, look, I'm going to share a wake-up story with you. This is a case study, and this case study happened at the Republican National Convention in 2016, where a company, Avast, stood up a free Wi-Fi hotspot that was unsecured. Anybody could connect to it, and you know what happened? Within a day, they had scraped credentials for over 1,000 delegates at the Republican National Convention. Their objective was to try and give people a wake-up call and say, we're not using these credentials for anything. Instead, we just want you to make you aware that there are risks in using open, unsecured Wi-Fi hotspots. Nobody paid attention to this, at least in our CAR environment. So I had to do something a little bit different. So I tried another wake-up story. And this is a case study of that wake-up story, which occurred at the Reimagine conference almost 2 years ago, just under 2 years ago. And this was the one that was held in downtown LA at the convention center and with the hotels near LA Live. What I did when I was asked to speak to a group of association executives, presidents and president-elect, was I set up a Wi-Fi pineapple. A Wi-Fi pineapple is a little device. And the one that I used looked exactly like this. And let me tell you, you'd hardly stub your toe on the barrier to entry to acquire such a device. It was on sale for $89.99. I was able to buy a Wi-Fi pineapple. So why is Josh telling me about Wi-Fi pineapples? What does a Wi-Fi pineapple do? What a Wi-Fi pineapple does is it masquerades as a legitimate Wi-Fi hotspot. And it broadcasts the Wi-Fi SSID to anyone who is within range. And what happens is that particular Wi-Fi ID, SSID, is broadcast. Somebody who thinks that they may be connecting to a legitimate hotspot is actually connecting to a bad actor's hotspot that is masquerading as a legitimate one, and the attacker or bad actor is able to see everything that's flowing back and forth. This is what I set up at the CAR meeting, and I will tell you that I did not capture any of the traffic. I simply wanted to capture the number of people who would perhaps unknowingly connect to this potentially malicious Wi-Fi access point or hotspot without giving it a second thought. So I set it up, and we were at the JW Marriott in Ritz-Carlton, and within 2 minutes of my setting it up, I had 7 people connected. And I have obfuscated the host names, and some people thought they were connecting to Best Buy, to Google Starbucks, to LA Guests, to see the CAR Expo. Some even thought they were connecting to the Washington Dulles Wi-Fi, but they still connected. Here they're sitting in downtown Los Angeles thinking they're connecting to a hotspot in Dallas, Texas, really. Okay, after 4 minutes, 9 people are connected. After 7, 12, after 10, 20, after 17, 26 are connected, and they now think that they're all connecting to the JW Marriott guest Wi-Fi or Macy's 31 after 21 minutes, 41 after 27 minutes. After 33 minutes, I had 43 people connected. It was time for me to get ready for my presentation. So as I shut down the Wi-Fi Pineapple, I had 45 people connected, and that's how I began my presentation, letting them know that 45 of you in the audience really surrendered your credentials to me, and probably not a good idea. I had their attention, and the reason I had their attention was because, in fact, I was able to connect with them on something they could relate to. It was about them. It wasn't about something that happened at a political convention 4 years earlier. So here is my thesis. I want to share with you how to connect to open, unsecured Wi-Fi hotspots securely, and thus avoid what is called the man-in-the-middle exploit, where someone who is a bad actor is sitting between you and the internet. You think you're connected to something legitimate, but instead you are connected to them, and they are essentially proxying or relaying all of your traffic while making a copy, potentially, or seeing everything that's flowing across because it's unsecured. The solution is to use a virtual private network, or a VPN. What does a VPN do? A virtual private network establishes an encrypted connection between you and a VPN server or service across an unencrypted or an unsecured connection. So what happens is the client application on your computer, on your laptop, or on your phone or on your tablet makes a connection to the VPN service, secures and encrypts that connection, and then what the VPN does is it translates and relays all of the traffic between the various different website properties that you want to visit and you, and over the connection between you and the internet, which is unsecured and potentially a malicious hotspot, it's fine, because the communication will not be able to be decrypted by a bad actor. So you say you want it and you want it now. I have two recommendations, again, based on personal experience. One is OpenVPN, and the second is NordVPN. And here's where you might want to pull out your cell phone or take a screenshot. Here are the links. And at the same time, I would share with you that many virus protection services have VPNs, have virtual private networks built into them. Avast and Norton are two such examples. So you may not need to already to purchase a service because you may already have it. And again, the message here is when you are connecting to public unsecured Wi-Fi connections or hotspots, if you have a VPN, you can do so with a sense of confidence. If you don't have a VPN, I really encourage you to be very, very thoughtful of whether you want your new usernames and passwords being transmitted across an unsecured connection. So that's the message. You don't have to shy away from public access points, but if you do use them, I do encourage you to use a virtual private network. And Philip asks a question, and I'll be happy to answer it. Yes, what's the difference between a Wi-Fi Pineapple sniffing the traffic and a Wireshark? Okay, what is the difference? Well, the difference is that a Wi-Fi Pineapple is the device that provides the ability to masquerade, and Wireshark is an application that, once it is connected to a network, captures all the traffic across the network. So think of the Wi-Fi Pineapple as the hardware and software device that does the masquerading, and Wireshark as the tool to read the traffic. And many of the Wi-Fi pineapples also have their own analysis tools that are available. Please don't conclude or infer that Wireshark is a malicious program. It is not. It's a wonderful diagnostic tool, and we use it quite often in order to understand what is happening on networks. All right, I hope that was helpful. Let's move on. You might hear about zero trust, and you might hear that zero trust is replacing VPNs. I want to take a moment to just put that in context for you. A virtual private network uses what is called a castle and moat architecture, meaning we dig a moat and fill it with water around your assets. There is a bridge across the moat to the castle, and the bridge is the VPN. So anyone who doesn't have the VPN can't cross the bridge to all of the good stuff that's in the castle. They fall into the moat. Here's just another cartoonish depiction of that. So it keeps the bad guys out and allows the good guys in, so to speak, who have the VPN and the credentials to get there. Zero trust is a slightly different approach. Zero trust, rather than going through a VPN and essentially authenticating once for the VPN session, they authenticate each and every payload that comes across the barrier. This is not yet something that has made it to the consumer domain, where you can, as an individual, use zero trust security, but it certainly is something that is coming into vogue with the with corporate internet security. So we are now going to shift gears one more time. And to do so, I am going to share my third and final poll with you. This is the last one. I'm going to encourage everyone to jump in and share. It's really easy. This one is just saying I have approximately, fill in the blank, website accounts. When you consider your business account, your personal account, accounts that you use for leisure, the old ones that you never use anymore, how many of these accounts do you have lying around? And how many of these accounts do you have? Okay, we have just a few people who are participating. Come on, folks. Everybody can play. Think about all of the websites that you visit where you have to share a username or password. I will tell you where I am. I'm well beyond 100. Last count, between 500 and 600, based on the records that I keep. Okay, just a few more seconds. All right, let's take a look. And we'll go ahead and share the results. This is fairly typical, by the way. And you can see where people lie. And the question is, oh my gosh, how do we deal with all of these various different credentials and accounts? So we're going to talk about access control, in particular access control in terms of what some of the issues are. Here's an exercise that I'd like you to try. You can go visit the haveibeenpwned.com, where pwned is spelled P-W-N-E-D. Enter a password, excuse me, enter an email address, which is typically a username for many accounts. And you see my josh@car.org was found in 16 data breaches. You all know Gov. His was found in 5. Joel's was found in 17. This is where you've read all of the news stories about these various different companies who have suffered breaches, and in those breaches, usernames and credentials were leaked. You can also check to see if a password of yours has been involved in this data breach and any of these data breaches, because very often many of these websites were not very responsible, and they stored passwords in plain text. They didn't bother to encrypt it. So when those passwords got out in the wild and they were associated with usernames, what did the bad actors do? They go ahead and try and apply those passwords and the usernames to whatever sites might be out there. Why? Because they make the assumption that, in fact, you reuse credentials. This was my password, and it was one of my original ones going back 30 years. My gosh, it was so simple, it would be cracked instantly. My current one has not been used, and this is my strong passphrase that would take quite a long time to be cracked using brute force methods. And the reason I'm sharing this is that the National Institute of Standards and Technologies has really asserted that passphrases are what is in vogue rather than passwords. And what does this mean? You have more, you have 20, you have 40, you have 60, you have 80, you have over 100 different websites. The likelihood is that you are in fact going to reuse usernames and passwords, and that's a terrible idea, because if you reuse them and a site is breached, now you have to change it and change the credentials in all of the sites that use those credentials. On the other hand, if they were unique, then you only have to change it in one place. But who's going to remember all of that? Well, the way to remember it all is to have a very complex passphrase, which is just a string of words that normally would not be strung together that you might be able to remember with certainty. For example, elephants upside down fly backwards. Okay, there's a complex, very difficult to crack password or passphrase that could be the opening portal to a password manager. You say, oh my gosh, I got to change all those passwords. It's going to take me forever. I love this slide because it gives you a sense of perspective. Is it a 6 or a 9? It depends how you look at it. Security is inconvenient. Okay, I stipulate that. It's a pain in the butt to have individual passwords, but once you do it, I will assert that you will sleep better at night. There are a variety of different password vaults that are all good. This is a number of them. I happen to use 1Password for myself and my family. And what I'd like to do is give you a sense of what features to look for in a password manager. You want it to be able to generate very strong passwords for you. You want it to be able to assert whether a particular site has been breached before, so that it gives you a warning. You may not be on top of it. It should identify reused passwords. The customer service should not know who you are, have direct access, and thus be blind to who you are. I like encrypted notes, files, and documents. I'm going to describe what that is in just a moment. And I also like that it works across all of my devices, which is why I use 1Password, but it's a personal choice. All of the ones that I shared work well. On a personal note, one of the things that I do with the encrypted password vault is I have all of my important personal documents stored there as well. Wills, trust, durable power of attorney for healthcare, my ethical will and direction to my survivors, you name it, all a listing of all of our banking information, so that should I suffer my untimely demise in case of emergency, the family knows, go to the safe deposit box, open the envelope that has the my strong password, passphrase, to access my password vault, and in there They will have everything that they need to carry on and move forward. And it certainly has relieved, for me, a lot of stress about being concerned about all of the what ifs. And it's a byproduct of simply doing the right thing to preserve my privacy and identity on the internet. So I'm going to come to the last subject here, and that is one of identity management. And I'll tell you right off the bat, it's inconvenient, at least to get started, but it's getting easier all the time. And I want to tell you another story, and this is a story that actually took place. So all good stories begin with once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a woman who was a bad actress who happened to walk into a Bank of America branch somewhere in Atlanta, Georgia. Well, I was attending, you remember Zachary, okay? Zachary was graduating from medical school at the time. And say, oh my gosh, what did that woman do? Well, my wife and I were far, far away. She walked into a branch of Bank of America and masqueraded as my wife. Somehow she must have obtained my wife's social security number, and she opened an account at Bank of America and linked it with all the other family accounts. She was very clever. She started with a few small deposits to make sure everything was working. And the next day, she made a couple of very, very small withdrawals that were, almost insignificant. And when she had the confidence that all was working, and it just so happened coincidentally we were away, boom. That's when she drew down the entire remaining balance on our home equity line of credit and cleaned out all of the accounts. And that's when my phone blew up with all sorts of notifications. Took about 3 weeks and a lot of inconvenience. Every penny was returned. They found who this person was through the security videos taken at the Bank of America branch. But that's when we got a little bit smart, perhaps a little bit too late. And in addition to having an online ID and passcode for logging into Bank of America, we also enabled multi-factor authentication. And had this been in place at the time that this exploit was perpetrated, then they would not have been able to open the account because they would have needed my cell phone in order to receive a text message that would give them the second factor. And I suppose if someone was really enterprising, they could try and spoof my cell phone, but for that, they would have to know my cell phone number, and I would have received the notification as well. And knowing that I hadn't requested it, I could have intervened. So what is multi-factor authentication? It's something that you have. What do you have? You have your cell phone. As an example, you have the ATM card, something that you are, typically biometrics, and something that you know, like a password. And that way, not only do you have your username and password, but you have to have that additional factor. And if you don't have that additional factor, you can't gain access. Why don't people set this up? We don't set it up because it's a pain in the butt, right? You have to have one more step in order to log in. But I do encourage you to set it up for your banking accounts. I do encourage you to set it up for your Amazon account and for your email, lest your email be hijacked from you. I do encourage you to set it up for Google and for any other web property that makes multi-factor authentication available. I will tell you that we use multi-factor authentication on car.org. Again, people are our weakest link, and without a doubt, a week does not go by where the multi-factor authentication doesn't save our butts, meaning that someone's credentials somehow were surrendered, either knowingly or unknowingly, through a careless act. And we see some bad actor trying to log in, but they can't because they don't have that second factor. And after 3 failed attempts, that account gets locked out, and we have to intervene, and passwords and credentials are changed. My message here is just do it. I know it's a pain in the butt, but it's the right thing to do. And if you're not going to do it for yourselves, though I think it's absolutely worthwhile to do it for yourself, then do it for your clients and dispatch your responsibility to be an outstanding steward of your clients' personal identifying information and protect your reputational integrity, which frankly only you can squander. So just recapping, these are the subjects that we explored together today. This is really all I intended to share with you. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have either now or in the future, and I am sharing my email address with you in the upper left-hand corner of what you see on your screen right now, so that should you have questions in the future, you can most certainly reach out to me, and I will do my best. I will do my best to help you out.
Well, fantastic. That was just amazing information. And I'm sure everybody was like me going to the Have You Been Pwned site and getting a little upset by what you see. If you do go on there with your email and see that it's been attacked once, 13, 56 times, what do you suggest that we do?
Okay, that's a fair question. First of all, you're not going to close your email account because your email really is an important part of your identity. But what I do recommend that you do is absolutely use a password manager, protect the password manager with a complex passphrase, and just resign yourself or steel yourself to a month-long process of every time you visit a website, changing the credential to a unique credential. Your password manager will remember that credential, and over a period of time, you will now have unique passwords for each of your accounts online. You probably will allow your password manager to generate the password for you. And by doing so, it'll be a strong password. It will remember it, and it will be much more difficult to crack with brute force. And if you're ever concerned, just know, I should say, if you're ever wondering about should you be motivated to do so, there are lists of commonly used passwords and how many people use them. And you would be surprised to see how many reuses there are of what are seemingly complex passwords.
Yeah, I'm sure it's pretty mind-boggling when some people just have these very simple ones. I have one more question before we go to the ones in the chat. Many times we'll be getting, let's say, a Facebook Messenger message from somebody that you're like, I know darn good and well, this person's been on Facebook for years. Or better yet, this person died 3 years ago. Unless they're speaking to me from the grave, I really shouldn't be getting a Facebook message from them. If people were using the two-factor authentication on their social media, would that help them from being hacked?
Without a doubt. And let's face it, with social media accounts, people join social media accounts without having the sophistication of bringing with it their business behavior and their business intentionality, and generally chose very simple passwords. Fast forward to where we are today, your social media accounts are an important component of your presence in the marketplace. It is a vehicle for your communication, and it is an important business asset in addition to being an important personal asset. So absolutely, I would strongly recommend using two-factor authentication everywhere where it is possible. And let me tell you, it is painful to see what happens when social media accounts get hacked, especially since there's no human support at the other end that is readily accessible to help you. So to avoid all of that frustration, just buy in and say, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, it's definitely
two-factor authentication.
Yeah, no matter how long it takes you to set up that two-factor authentication, it's a lot better than trying to close down a hacked account. Philip asks, how do you tell if someone has a Pineapple Wi-Fi on the Wi-Fi network at Starbucks?
Assume that everybody does and simply use a VPN. That may not be a satisfying answer, but for the tools that you have at hand, I would rather you make the assumption that every open network is unsecure, and when you choose to use it, use a VPN. Now, if what you're doing is checking the weather, I'm not worried about that. If you're not logging into anything, I'm not worried about it. But the minute you are doing something of value, then certainly use a VPN. And so that you don't develop a bad habit saying, oh, I was going to check the weather, but let me just check my bank account while I'm here. Just develop the habit to use the VPN all the time.
Or just don't check your bank account while you're at Starbucks. We have one more question. Can the password managers get hacked?
Well, let's think about that for a minute, because I think it's really interesting. None of the legitimate password managers store passwords in a central location. Okay? If they did, that would be an incredible target. Instead, all of the passwords are stored and are encrypted locally. The only thing that the online presence does is it allows you to set up your account, and it handles it may handle the synchronization of the encrypted password vault across all of your devices. So the most likely way that a password manager would get hacked is if you surrendered your credential for the password manager, meaning that you wrote it down, put it on a yellow Post-it note, and stuck it up on your computer, or something equally short-sighted as that, which is why you want to choose a passphrase that you will never, ever, 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 ever forget, and it just becomes part of your identity and part of both your short-term and long-term memory. So that even if it were to get hacked, so to speak, the only thing that they would have access to is an encrypted file that uses an encryption scheme that has not yet been exploited or breached.
This has been, and this is my second time listening to this, and I'm still just blown away on this information. And all you folks that joined us today, tell your friends to watch this for the recording, just for the have you been pwned part, to make you feel, number one, really vulnerable, and two, just for your own well-being. It's just such fantastic information. And Dr. Sharpman, thank you so much for being here today. We're so happy that you took the time to join us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. We appreciate everyone's participation and engagement with both OCAR and with CAR.
Fantastic. Remember, everybody, two-factor verification. That's gonna be the one that saves you. But we're so happy that you took time to present today, and everybody stay safe out there. Thank you very much.